Breaking news on CBS News New York. Pope Francis has died at the age of 88. The Vatican making the announcement just a few minutes ago.
We are live this morning with how he's being remembered. Good morning on this Monday, April 21st. I'm Chris Ragdy.
And I'm Mary Calvi. Welcome to CBS News New York. The sad news comes a day after the Pope made a special appearance for Easter at the Vatican. The pontiff gave his blessing in Latin and then took a victory lap in his Pope-mobile just 3 weeks after he was discharged from the hospital for a case of pneumonia. In an announcement overnight, Cardinal Kevin Farrell said Francis returned to the home of his father. His entire life was dedicated to the service of the Lord and of his church.
Dick Brennan begins our coverage this morning with a look back at his life.
Fratelli e sorelle,
brothers and sisters,
buonasera.
Good evening.
A sea of faithful greeted Pope Francis when he emerged on the central balcony of St. Peter's Basilica in 2013. Francis succeeded Benedict XVI, the first pope in 6 centuries to resign. In his first speech as pope, he asked the people to bless him. A man of humility, Pope Francis earned the nickname the People's Pope. Taking a page from his namesake, St. Francis of Assisi, he often wore simple robes and lived in a small apartment at the Vatican.
Faith brings us the light that scatters the darkness.
At age 76, Francis became the first South American pope, the first from the Jesuit order, and the first non-European pope in more than 1,000 years. Pope Francis was born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Buenos Aires, Argentina in 1936. He became a priest in 1969 and Archbishop of Buenos Aires in 1998. Then he was known as the Bishop of the Slums, preaching in the poorest neighborhoods.
There are many unjust situations, but we know that God is suffering with us, experiencing them at our side. He does not abandon us.
Francis championed service and kindness in his time as a pope. He washed prisoners' feet, spoke up for refugees and migrants, and offered a conciliatory message for the LGBTQ community, saying,
If a person is gay and accepts the Lord and has goodwill, who am I to judge them?
In 2015, Pope Francis made his first visit to the U.S. A crowd joined then-President Obama to greet the Pope as he took his first steps on U.S. soil. The trip would take him to New York and Philadelphia, but while visiting Washington, he achieved a milestone.
I am most grateful for your invitation to address this joint session of Congress.
On a 2016 trip to Mexico, the Pope celebrated Mass before 200,000 people in Juarez, 50 yards from the U.S. border. He offered a message of hope to migrants seeking a better life, saying, "We cannot deny the humanitarian crisis." Early in his papacy, Francis tackled another huge issue for the church, assembling a panel of experts to advise him on church sex abuse. The goals were to help protect children from pedophiles, better screen men for the priesthood, and help victims. But victims would later say there hadn't been enough consequences for bishops accused of harboring predator priests.
It is important that every allegation is investigated.
In 2019, Pope Francis expelled disgraced former Archbishop of Washington, D.C., Theodore McCarrick. McCarrick was found guilty by the Vatican of sex abuse. McCarrick became the highest-ranking church figure and first cardinal to be defrocked in modern times. This was followed by the first global summit on preventing church sex abuse. Francis opened the summit with a prayer and a call to action. Listen to the cry of the little ones who want justice. In the 2020 documentary Francesco, Pope Francis revealed his support for same-sex civil unions. The documentary also touched on other issues important to Francis, including poverty, racism, and the environment.
I'm convinced that we can make a difference.
The following year, as the COVID pandemic raged on, Pope Francis urged people to get vaccinated. In a video message, he said, vaccination was a simple but profound way of promoting the common good and caring for each other. In 2023, Pope Francis celebrated the funeral mass for his predecessor, Pope Benedict XVI, in St. Peter's Square at the Vatican. He was the first sitting pope to preside over the funeral of a retired pontiff in church history. Later that year, he marked the 10th anniversary of his papacy, saying on a podcast, "The best gift would be peace. Around that time, Francis, who had part of his lung removed when he was younger, battled a series of respiratory ailments. He also underwent abdominal surgery and faced knee problems. The Pope managed to overcome health issues to continue with his work leading the Catholic Church. In February 2025, Francis spoke out against the second Trump administration's plans for mass deportations of migrants. He warned that forcefully removing people simply because of their illegal status deprive them of dignity and will end badly. The Trump administration had a strong response, saying the Pope should leave border enforcement to them. Through political and social upheaval, Pope Francis sought to help the Church and its faithful grow and deal with change during rapidly changing times. In a 2024 interview with Norah O'Donnell on 60 Minutes, he spoke about how he was able to hold on to optimism.
When you look at the world, what gives you hope?
Everything. You see tragedies, but you also see so many beautiful things.
As the world remembers Pope Francis this morning, he had a special relationship with New York. He visited here 10 years ago. Christine Johnson with the story.
As the pontiff stepped off his plane that late September day, he was greeted by crowds of faithful. The atmosphere was simply joyous.
It's pretty extraordinary right now. He's moving toward the crowd, and his face is absolutely beaming.
CBS 2's Dick Brennan was there, and he spoke to a 12-year-old girl who was blessed by Francis.
I came here because I wanted to meet the Pope because I believe in a miracle.
And you saw him. What was that like?
It was the most precious moment of my life.
Julia Bruzzese had lost the use of her legs. Doctors suspected Lyme disease, but were unable to confirm it until days after her meeting with the Pope.
For the first time since I got ill, they saw Lyme disease activity in my blood. This just shows to me that a miracle can happen if you believe.
As the Pope made his way to St. Patrick's Cathedral, I was on Fifth Avenue as the feeling of jubilation cascaded through the crowd.
Oh, this is so exciting. And the of the cheering gets closer and closer. There he is!
That night, a 17-year-old girl had a surprise encounter with Pope Francis at St. Patrick's Cathedral before the service. Stephanie Gabad, who has spina bifida, says the Pope gave her a hug and a kiss and a blessing.
What did he say to you?
He said something to me in Spanish, but I couldn't quite understand what he was saying.
And what did you say to him?
Bendiciones, Papa, that means bless you.
The Pope took a serious tone during his homily. He addressed church sex abuse scandals and tragedies around the world. He cautioned against temptation and spoke of sacrifice, grace, and humility.
Gratitude and hard work. These are two pillars of the spiritual life which I have wanted to share with you this evening.
The Pope had high praise for nuns and other women across the globe.
What would the church be without you? Women of strength, fighters. To you, religious women, sisters and mothers of this people, I wish to say thank you.
On his second day in the city, the Pope addressed the largest gathering of world leaders ever at the United Nations. Francis asked those in attendance to spread equality and dignity from those in power to the excluded. After speaking at the UN, the Pope headed down to Ground Zero for an interfaith service, and he would reflect on how he was moved by the experience.
That place which speaks so powerfully of the mystery of evil. Yet we know with certainty that evil never has the last word.
He then visited Our Lady Queen of Angels School in East Harlem, where he received an exuberant welcome.
I was like, oh my gosh, he's here. I'm so excited. I'm so nervous.
From there, he went to Central Park for a special procession. The outpouring of love and support for the pontiff was reflected in the crowd of close to 80,000 lined up to see him. So many expressed their great faith in him.
He is the savior of the Catholic Church.
He's going to bring us all back to our faith and make us all one in this universe.
The Pope ended the day at Madison Square Garden celebrating Mass, joined by as many as 20,000 faithful. Emotions were deeply felt as he gave his blessings. The crowd was moved to rise to their feet as his procession approached the stage. As the Pope spoke, he drew a parallel between the garden and the city itself.
In this place, which represents both the variety and the common interests of so many different people, we have listened to the words, "The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light."
It's an incredible visit.
Certainly, and that moment that he walked through the crowd at the Vatican after being through so much and hearing this news this morning. The world's remembering Pope Francis. We'll be right back.